have to make it to air.
Live from New York.
Welcome to the Filmcast review of Saturday Night. I'm going to read the plot summary of Saturday Night from the internet. Tensions run high as producer Lorne Michaels and a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers prepare for the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live on October 11th, 1975. Jason Reitman directed this movie. I think my sense is he got some juice after directing Ghostbusters Afterlife. A movie that was pretty financially successful. And therefore he's like, hey, now I can make my passion project or one of my passion projects. And I think this was one of them. This is a movie that he obviously directed. He's also a co-writer and producer on this one. And I've been a fan of this guy for a long time, but he had a run of movies where even though the movies were good, people didn't watch them. Like Tully, I thought was pretty solid movie. The Front Runner was decent, and then he had movies like Men, Women, and Children and Labor Day. Not a huge fan of that. Young Adult, I thought was actually awesome. I still think that movie is amazing. So this is kind of him going back to his old indie roots. I would say this is feels like a very, looks expensive, but it's feels like a very independent project that wouldn't necessarily get made by a major studio these days. All that said, Jeff Canada, I'm curious, what did you think of Saturday Night?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say what I thought of Saturday Night is best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Let's hear it, Jeff.
A reverent idyllic archive of comics, both dead and alive. If you ask what I think-o, from uno to cinco, I'd give it a Saturday Night 5.
5 out of what? Finko?
I like this movie very, very much. Is it revelatory? Is it going to give you insight into how Saturday Night Live came to be? Not really. I don't think so. We were just talking in this very, very episode about biopics and things that try to convince you that all of this stuff happened. I don't believe this movie. Maybe a lot of this stuff happened at different times, and they, with artistic license, said it all happened this one night, all of it right now.
It is a very Steve Jobs.
It's 100% Steve Jobs,
Aaron Sorkin-esque approach to this material.
Yes,
right?
And I like that it's focused on one moment in time. It's almost, I don't know this to be technically true, but it feels almost real time. Like the minutes of watching this movie equate to the minutes in the context of the narrative.
Almost. They use the time title cards like 24 does. So you really know things are getting heated.
And I like that it's restricted like that. It is one moment in time. We don't flash back. We don't flash out. We don't get out. It is just this thing that's happening. Now, in order to make that consistently interesting and dramatic, a lot of stuff happens that I find to be hard to believe that this is how this all went down.
Agreed.
But that's okay. I don't think this movie is trying to be an
actual minute by minute
record of a recreation of. It is trying to provide a wacky, fun time around something that I think was interesting historically and pretty exciting, and I think it accomplishes that. Well, I had a blast with this, and I think a lot of it has to do with Jason Reitman's direction. This movie has a fantastic pace to it. It is the camera is moving. We feel this kinetic energy, the pressure of, oh my gosh, we're going to go live at this time, and tick tock, we're getting closer to it. I think that really works well for this movie. It gives the movie this momentum, and Saturday Night Live, I should have started by saying I'm a huge Saturday Night Live fan, have been my whole life. I used to stay up when I was a little kid, had a little 13-inch tube TV in my bedroom, and I would stay up late and watch Saturday Night Live. And this was, my era was, Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman and all those people. And I fell in love with it then, and I watched old 70s episodes of Saturday Night Live. I used to fantasize about being in the cast, or hosting it. I would have dreams where I was hosting Saturday Night Live. I revere the show, and it has gotten, I think, over the eras. It's 50 years. This is the 50th year of Saturday Night Live. So over the eras, it's gotten kind of in vogue to think the show is lame or, slag on the show. I was never that guy. Every episode's going to have bad sketches and have good sketches. I will tell you, side note, tangent, this 50th season, particularly the Nate Bargatze episode, who was one of my favorite stand-ups, like top to bottom, phenomenal episode of Saturday Night Live. Like the show is cooking. Like it is hilarious. A great episode. So the show is still capable of being excellent. And I have loved it. I have watched it my whole life. I continue to still really enjoy Saturday Night Live. So I am inclined to be down for this subject matter for this film. And I very much, revere that first cast. And so it has this great pace. It has the subject matter I'm into. And I think the cast is really excellent, specifically with a very difficult thing, which is portray people that many of us are very familiar with, right? And, particularly Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd and Lamorne Morris, who is that the son of Garrett Morris? Because he looks and talks and behaves exactly like Garrett Morris. It's an uncanny. So
he's incredible. Yeah.
He's got the same last name. I'm assuming he's related. I would not be surprised if it's his son. I did not know that for sure, and I wasn't able to find it. But also Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase. There's just really excellent channeling.
They're not related.
They're not.
Yep.
They're not? Oh, wow. That's amazing. They have the same last name, and he is like doing a uncanny Garrett Morris, I think. And a number of them, like Dylan O'Brien's Dan Aykroyd is so good. And so it's not impressions per se, but it's kind of like a channeling of the essence of the energy.
Yeah.
And so that is really fun too. And I think, the movie very much portrays Lorne Michaels as this sort of unflappable genius who always sort of knew he had something brilliant. And maybe he did. I find that hard to believe. Like, people are rarely that confident at the time, when, I'm going to make something that's going to last for 50 years. And people, I don't think he knew that. But overall, as much as this movie doesn't really feel to me, as somebody who's very much into Saturday Night Live and the history of Saturday Night Live, doesn't feel like it reveals anything new per se, I still had such a great time watching it. And I think it's a very crowd pleasing. I laughed a lot. It's very funny. Like, I laughed a lot, and I think it's a very easy breezy, fun time at the cinema.
Devindra Hardawar, your thoughts on Saturday Night?
Basically, it's sweet, it's funny, it has a lot of heart to it, which is like the early Jason Reitman stuff. Before he started making things that I just felt like, I don't know, they were just kind of morose. Like, it lost the levity of some of the stuff I loved earlier on from him. So, no, this is easy breezy, is a good way to put it, Jeff. But I'll also say, I feel like if you grow up in America, you watch TV over the last several decades, Saturday Night Live is a part of your life in some fashion. You may not consistently watch it, but you'll hear the jokes referenced to it on the playground or wherever. You'll hear people talk about it. You may see clips of it. Now it's like, I think people just run into YouTube clips, which is kind of a fun thing. I've always liked the show. I've never been a super fan. And I do think like there have been ups and downs. There are seasons where I'm like, I don't really care for anybody involved or the writers or anything. So I just kind of will ignore it for a while. But what this movie does is it really does cement the fact that, like we say, every movie is kind of a miracle. It's a miracle that Saturday Night Live can be a thing. That live comedy every week, corralling the insanity of different personalities and writers and whatnot to make a thing. Like it is very much about the spirit of like, wow, it's crazy this thing was done. And I think about it now, I was like, wow, it's crazy we're still kind of doing this. And I hear stories from people who feel traumatized having gone through the Saturday Night Live experience. Like Conan O'Brien talks about it like being a really difficult thing because it's very much the pressure cooker of every night you're kind of up late to like write the stuff, and then by the middle of the week you're writing the show, and then you just hope it all goes well. And I think this movie really captures that pressure cooker vibe, but most importantly, it captures the fact that it's just like, wow, this is so different than how TV used to be. And even today, it's still like kind of a unique thing among TV. It's not an old school variety show. It is not just a late night talk show. It is full on comedy sketches, with tremendous writing behind it, but a lot of improv, the spontaneity of live entertainment, like that is part of the essence of it too. And I think even still today, like we love it. We love episodes where people crack up. I love watching them where people start to break. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. It's certainly, I would love to see the breakdown of like maybe how accurate it was or what sources it was pulling from. But the idea that, yeah, Chevy Chase is there and just being kind of an asshole, like the personalities that they embody in this movie feel very true to like what we've heard and seen from those characters too. So yeah, had a lot of fun with it. Also, it is remarkable that what's his name? Gabriel LaBelle is stars in this movie. He's 21 years old. Right? We just saw him do the Spielberg movie too, where I think even then people were like, "Oh, that's kind of incredible." Philip Seymour Hoffman's son is in this too, so like he is fantastic in it. But I remember Lorne Michaels was like 30 when SNL was starting, so there is a huge actual age gap between like the character Gabriel LaBelle is playing, but he like it's the essence of like, man, this guy just looks really young, right? He just looks so young. He's so in over his head, and that kind of sells it too in this film. So yeah. Also have to say, like, listen, we talk about loving Aaron Sorkin stuff. This is my kind of jam. Just like walk and talk movie, pressure cooker environment. You got a deadline. You got important things are happening. This is
Quippy,
all those pieces.
right?
But yeah,
it is. I would say it is Aaron Sorkin-esque in a good way. Like
In a
it
good way.
is. It is like I've seen some rough Aaron Sorkin imitations. You know.
Yes.
But this is like, if you told me Aaron Sorkin wrote this, I would not be surprised.
This is like Studio 60, but good, basically. That's kind of
like
it's kind of
Studio
weird.
60.
I
Aaron
like Studio
Sorkin-
60 just fine. I like The Newsroom. Okay, I will defend a
do
lot of
too.
Aaron Sorkin. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
like
the
the
one
Steve
guy-
Jobs movie. Yeah.
Dave described me in the intro. I'm the guy that wanted Studio 60 to be longer.
Yeah. It's
This is
out
true.
Aaron Sorkin's Aaron Sorkin, I think, actually,
At
in a
times.
good way, in
At
the sense
times.
that, like,
Yeah.
I'd much rather watch this than Studio 60, personally. So, anyway. Okay. I'll share a few thoughts. I am deeply ambivalent about this movie.
Even though
of
you'd
course.
rather watch it
Of
than
course.
Studio 60.
Well, because on the one hand, here's the thing. This movie is so well made. By the way, I kind of alluded earlier to like, oh, feels like an indie film. It's not an indie film, right? Sony made it. They're putting it out. So just want to clarify that. But it feels like a movie that like doesn't really get made that much anymore these days because, you know, it's like
Doesn't have big stars.
doesn't have big stars. There's no high concept really,
Yeah.
other than, you know, the 90 minutes before the first episode aired.
Below
Like,
mid-budget, it's like what 25-30 million budget. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but you know, Jason Reitman has done right by Sony. Like he made Ghostbusters Afterlife, that did well. He co-wrote the Frozen Empire, and that did fine as well. You know, so I think they're like, okay, you can have $30 million to make.
you can make your little movies for adults.
You can
Jason
make your
Reitman.
little movies for adults. That's fine. This movie is really, really well made, in my opinion. Like just like Jeff put it, you know, the camera movements are just real. It's the camera's like always moving throughout the whole thing. It's really dynamic. Like every moment, every setup. There's actually like creative sequences stylistically that I'm like, oh wow, like the whole look and feel of it shifts into a different zone for a couple parts of the movie, and it's like, whoa.
There's a point where a character is about to enter a room, and they do the Grandpa Simpsons like, nope, not going in there. It's like, what? And then you enter, and it is a whole different vibe than what we were just going through. Yeah,
all of the production values are like immaculate. Like the look and the feel of it all feels accurate to the time, and all the actors are amazing. And in particular, like you guys said, the main gentleman, Gabriel LaBelle, right? He was the main character in The Fabelmans as well.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So
playing a teenager,
he's really good
as a
and
teenager. Basically,
you know, there's a temptation perhaps to be Dr. Evil, right? To do the like, I'm Lorne Michaels, you know, that like to do a real characterization.
You should tell people
caricature.
the thinking is like Dr. Evil was very much a Lorne impression.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And everybody has a Lorne, right? If you listen to any of the like the Dana Carvey, David Spade podcast, anybody that comes on that has met him, they ask, well, do your Lorne, because everybody has a Lorne impression, right? So it's like this thing, and I think it's really refreshing, and I think a smart choice for him to not do that. But there's like a hint of it. There's like he's doing a great job, I think, of making you feel a quality of that, but
Mhm.
not making it into caricature and I think all the actors kind of do that. It's impressive.
Yeah. He plays it very earnestly. You know,
Yes.
he plays it very earnestly. The core idea I'm obviously a fan of, which is, you know, this idea that like the old people don't know what the future is. The young people know what the future is. And here's a guy who's trying something new and different and experimental. And no one knows if it's going to work. And in fact, lots of people are betting on him to fail. And despite that, he's going to press forward and succeed. And like, it's a very enticing story, right? Like, it's a very kind of like irresistible narrative that we like. The underdog wins. We all love to see it. And
So tell us why you hate it.
Yeah. Explain the ambivalence. Tremendous filmmaking. So much talent on display.
So great. Everything about it
Nuts.
is great.
I had a fun.
hated it.
I had a fun time watching. You know, it's like never boring, right?
Right,
It's just,
right.
You're always like moving from one thing to the next. I agree with Jeff. I don't believe this is how the 90 minutes leading up to the first broadcast played out. Like, there's too many. There's
Yeah.
too
Too many
much shit
things.
going on.
Too many
Yeah.
things.
They're not like You know, okay, they're writing the script. You know, like
Yeah.
You don't have a show put together? Like you don't have the actual like
they're
layout of
literally
the show?
they're literally putting the bricks onto the stage,
Yeah, yeah.
guys.
It
I don't
seems
know if
like-
you guys. I don't know if you guys know this, but maybe the bricks on the stage represent the show itself. It's a metaphor, guys. I don't know if you know that.
Maybe that is how Saturday Night Live is made every week, guys.
Mhm.
Brick
Yeah,
by
perhaps.
brick.
It seems to me that Jason Reitman got a list of stories that happened
Right, yeah.
and crammed them all into one moment in time. And I think that's kind of how movies are, right?
Sure.
You're trying
Yeah.
to get it all in and trying
Yeah.
to, you don't have the ability to be like, well, there was this one time and then there was this other time. You know,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah,
no, we're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
show you this time.
Absolutely. So I have no objection to that. That's fine. Like I accept that as the construct. Okay, why am I deeply ambivalent about the movie? Because I find the message of the movie to be just so boring. And
People coming together to accomplish the impossible every week.
The young
Meh.
people having a sense of the future that the old people do not. Boring.
I think first of all, I think you guys have actually not intentionally. I don't think you're like trying to do what I'm saying.
mhm.
I think you have undersold how influential Saturday Night Live is. Like, and Devindra, you were saying it's very influential. It is. It literally shapes what comedy in America is. It's not just
And
Yeah.
politics for that matter.
Yes.
yeah. It's not just like, oh, people know the sketches. It's like Saturday Night Live is minting the stars
The superstars.
that will define what comedy in
A
America
generation.
is. Like Will
Yeah,
Ferrell,
generations.
you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
like he
Mike
got his start on Saturday Night
Myers,
Live. Mike
everybody.
Myers, Eddie Murphy,
You can't start a list because the list is all of comedy.
it's all
Yeah.
comedy. It's
Yeah.
all like 80 to 90% of the people that are like anyone
Yeah.
in comedy
Yeah.
got their start on Saturday Night Live. Not 80 to 90%, but like
Yeah,
a
it
huge
is-
percentage of
Yes.
in particular, I'll say a huge percentage of the mega stars. Obviously, comedy is like a rich tapestry. There's tons of people, but like the mega stars, most of them are like got their start from Saturday Night Live, or like were impacted by someone from Saturday Night Live, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it is a hugely influential institution. And this movie is basically saying, isn't this hugely influential thing great, guys? You know, like, wasn't it a great thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, I'm literally, I literally cannot escape the influence of this. Like, I literally cannot participate in society and culture without escaping the influence of this, or, you know, without being under the influence of this thing. And this movie is basically a celebration of this thing that shapes the culture in all of our lives. So it's like, I guess that's fine. You know, like there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I also think in doing so, it misses the opportunity to
Really tear
ask
it down.
not even tear it down, like ask any interesting questions whatsoever.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't these are not
it's,
like
Sure.
it's not interested in
right,
that,
exactly.
right?
These are not like unproblematic figures,
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
in the movie, right? Like
Yeah.
there are,
Right.
and the movie does touch upon like Belushi's like drug use and stuff like that, but like it doesn't come close to anything that is even, I would remotely say, is like trenchant or
Right.
insightful about some of the darker aspects of a show like Saturday Night Live.
It's just not interested in that.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just find that to be at best a missed opportunity and at best thuddingly boring in terms of like what
I
it's
could
trying to
kind
do.
of see that, but you know what? Aaron Sorkin's script for the Steve Jobs movie actually did cram in a lot of those things. And the exact complaints were, is he really going to be dealing with his issues being a shitty father, like right before every single product launch? Like, is it really
Yeah.
all going to come in then? So I
I
guess it's tough with the framing too.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. First of all, I have
I
no
love that
issue.
movie. I love
have
that
no.
movie.
I
Yeah.
think. Let me just. I'll just react to that and say the complaints were not. Oh, this is unrealistic. That this is how it would. Like my complaints would not be. It's unrealistic that he's dealing with his fatherhood right before the launches of each
Mhm.
product. I think it would be in the simplicity and how specifically the female characters in that movie were drawn, and less like the realism of it.
Mhm.
So I do think that Saturday Night misses an opportunity to kind of cast a more critical eye towards some of the decision making and approaches and the abuses that can happen in this kind of like very
Sure.
freewheeling environment. It's very reverential, and this is one of my complaints about Ghostbusters Afterlife is like we talked about it, I think, when that movie came out, which is like Ghostbusters Afterlife. The original Ghostbusters is, I think you said, Jeff, like, what if exterminators but ghosts, right? Like, what if exterminators but for ghosts? And it's kind of this working class blue collar, like, oh, haha, Dan Aykroyd gets blown by a ghost. Bill Murray's making all these jokes. Like, it's just like very goofy, freewheeling thing. And then Ghostbusters Afterlife is like, oh my, the ghost trap. It's whole, the outfit. It's holy.
Yeah.
Like, look at this lighting. We're gonna have
Yeah.
this like amazing lighting. It's so holy. And this movie takes the same approach to Saturday Night Live, which is like this kind of freewheeling. Oh my gosh, I can't. It's a miracle that it all came together. And it's like, what if he had a mission? And the mission is to usher in the next generation of talent and all. And it's like, okay,
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about any of this.
I just find it so tiresome.
You're not wrong. It didn't bother me to the extent it bothers you. I realized that we were there to have a good time and to sort of, admire the chutzpah, and that's kind of like wow, the chutzpah, But having said that, I don't think you are giving it enough credit for how rough around the edges they make all of it and how problematic some of the sequences are. Like, there's a fist fight between cast members in the movie. There's stuff, there's Chevy Chase stuff, there's John Belushi stuff. It's not trying to whitewash out any of that stuff. I think it's saying the position of the movie seems to be, this was chaotic and there's a lot of mess and kind of problematic stuff, but isn't it amazing that this happened despite the chaos? Right. I think and those are similar things, right? It's still that reverential tone you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think you do it a disservice to say, oh, there's none of the mess. I think the movie's kind of about the mess. It's just not critical of the mess. It's not saying, well, hey, there's some real issues here. It was more like, man, this was messy, but wow, isn't it amazing that happened? It happened despite the mess.
I think you are correct that the movie captures some of the more chaotic elements of the production. Here's what I'm talking about, though. There's an article in Long Reads called "Who's Afraid of Lorne Michaels" that kind of lays out some of the things about Lorne Michaels. And by the way, Lorne Michaels is just one component of Saturday Night Live, right? Obviously, there's been many people who have participated in the show.
But he is still the guy.
Component.
Right. Yeah. He's still the guy. Anyway, described in James Andrew Miller and Tom Shale's oral history as both a psychological terrorist and daddy, Michaels has cultivated a paternal relationship with his employees since the earliest days. But to be clear, paternal does not mean warm. By an astonishing number of accounts, his modus operandi is to remain distant and cold towards the people under him, meticulously withholding praise to the point they'll do whatever it takes to earn his approval. Lorne wants people to feel insecure, a former star told New York's Chris Smith. It's the same techniques cults use. They keep you up for hours, they never let you know that you're okay, and they always make you think that your spot could be taken at any moment by someone else, end quote. Not the portrait of him I got from the movie. I'll just put it that way.
If we did get spoilers, I feel like there's at least one thing I can point to that will lead to him being more.
There's no way to do that on night one of this job, because he wasn't that guy on night one of this job. right?
We can start to see how he will become that
Why?
guy.
Certainly.
I don't. Yeah, like obviously, but like the point is, Jason Reitman and Gil Keane chose to tell this particular. They
Sure,
chose to
sure.
tell the most boring version of the story. Is what I'm saying. Like they could have taken a broader look and like looked at other aspects of his life. They crammed other stuff from the future into night one. So like I'm just saying they chose to take an extremely reverential tone. He is the hero of the story, and I think that,
Yes.
and that is like, just not interesting to me as this kind of juggernaut of culture that I think actually deserves a closer examination, and like some a closer look at some of the things that might make it a more mixed picture. This movie did not deliver that in any regard at all, right? And as you said, Jeff, I don't think it's trying to. So
Right.
why don't we get to spoilers? Devindra, I think you wanted to mention something that might problematize the view of Lorne Michaels that this movie has.
Yeah. Who is it? It was I forget the actors involved, but there was a point where they're finalizing the show towards the very end. It was like, can you do it in 2 minutes? Was it who's he pointing at? It wasn't Billy Crystal.
Yeah, it is Billy
It
Crystal.
was Billy Crystal.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, can you do your thing in 2 minutes? He was like, yeah, we're gonna be firm and be like, no, it has to be at least 4 minutes. He says no, okay, you're out. Can you do it in 2 minutes? Okay, good, you're in. And just like cold, brutal death.
That's fair.
And
That's
to me,
fair.
that was
But
just like that is like what the calculus will start to be for him eventually. But we don't. Yeah, the movie is not saying like this is who he becomes. Basically,
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, I think the movie has virtually no dark undertones whatsoever, in my opinion, other than maybe like Chevy Chase.
I mean,
I thought that was like a great moment when the guy like lays out what Chevy Chase's like life is going to be, and Chevy Chase like can't wait for all that stuff to happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jeff, what were you gonna say?
No, I agree. I think Chevy Chase is made out to be a jerk. I mean, I think honestly, the weakest stuff in the movie for me is all the John Belushi stuff. Like, I don't think any of it really worked. That kind of weird sojourn we take to the ice rink, like none of that really worked for me.
maybe
that would
because
be
he is the saddest story too
Yeah.
from like the beginning. It's just like there was so much. I think the actor's portrayal of like the Belushiness of it all is kind of remarkable. Yeah.
I don't know.
This is a movie,
Mhm.
this is a movie that relies heavily on your meta knowledge of
Yes.
what is going on here.
Yes.
Like that's the thing
Yeah.
is like, and I think most people watching this movie probably will know about this stuff. But if you're watching this movie to try to be educated about it, I don't think it's going to help you very much.
Right.
But the Belushi stuff, I think, is made out to be really tragic in the movie because
I
it's
think
like,
that's what it is.
He is
yeah.
the most. He is portrayed as the most gifted out of like everyone there.
You were a genius,
and yeah,
like,
you're
you
a
will
genius.
change the face of comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not even a text that afterwards. It's like John Belushi died of blah blah blah. It's just like they just expect you to know most of the stuff, most of the sketches that are referenced, and so on and so forth. Like, so I think the movie still like functions on a basic level without that knowledge, but.
I don't know. You will be going around being like, yeah, what is happening? Why are these people important? Who is Gilda Radner?
Yeah,
Why
you
do
can
people love
imagine
her
if you
so
don't
much?
know any of these people, like this would be like pretty
Nothing.
incomprehensible. Like it'd be like, are we supposed to care about these people?
But again, we've gone on at length about how ingrained it is into our culture, and I think I think if it had been a little overly pedantic and kind of explained all that stuff, it would have felt even more exhausting.
I think
we should talk about, by the way, I think the biggest surprise of the movie for me, which is Mr. J.K. Simmons as Milton Berle. Holy shit.
Again, one of those things that I don't believe for a second happened on the night of.
You don't think Milton Berle whipped out his schlong?
I would believe that story happened at some point.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
literally
Milton
also
Berle, notoriously big dick.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Also to have that against Chevy Chase and also to have that takedown of Chevy Chase while his dick is out and his fiance is like, she's like, whoa. That whole sequence is just like, wow. We are going places in this movie.
Yeah, that was the most cartoonish moment, but it's also hilarious and funny, and like the whole like dance sequence. That I mean, J.K. Simmons is
so much fun.
Chewing scenery in this in the best possible way. It's so good. Yeah,
I did get like have this real feeling of like how fleeting fame is. I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and like Milton Berle, he's like I'm a big deal and look at my dick. Like that's his whole thing in the movie, right? And it's like no one gives a shit about Milton Berle today. You know, like at
That's
one
not
point he's
true.
probably
Talk to
okay.
your grandparents.
Your
All right.
grandparents, yeah.
Most people don't give a shit about Milton Berle today. You know, like and this is the thing is
That's
like
fine.
you can be like one of the most famous people on the planet, you know, for a given amount of time, and then like. You know, in a few decades,
I told
like,
you that story about being on set with those kids, and they had no idea who Keanu Reeves is.
Yeah,
It's just like
they will know who the
he's
most
still
famous
relevant.
TikTokers are.
Yeah,
He's still relevant.
You know, time will kill everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
But also,
I do think that's one of the themes of the movie. To be
Yes.
honest. Like, I think
Yeah.
like
Yes.
with him, like the whole Milton Berle, that's kind of what that was about for me, at least. That's what I got.
It's the idea of fame is also being redistributed to the point where it's almost diluted now too. I think like everyone's up in arms about that Hollywood Reporter piece, like the new Hollywood, which are all literally it's a whole list of influencers. I don't know who a single person is on that list.
Yeah.
But this is the new Hollywood, according to the and they're social media influencers, and that's the thing. That's what they do. How long will that last for anybody? Who knows?
I also want to shout out somebody we haven't mentioned yet, which is Nicholas Braun, who's playing two roles in this movie.
Yeah,
which I think is kind of a nod to the aesthetic of Saturday Night Live, where people are playing different characters in the context of a. And I just thought he's an amazing Andy Kaufman. Less so maybe for me as Jim Henson, but it's just cool that we see him play two parts in this movie, and it's pretty fun. Like all the Andy Kaufman stuff is so great. And by the way, I saw that moment coming a mile away with him, kind of saving the day and doing his Mighty Mouse bit, which is classic Saturday Night Live bit that he did. Which again, don't believe for a second any of that went down like that, but it's delightful in the context of the movie for me.
All right. Any other thoughts on Saturday Night, folks? Shall I wrap it up there?
I don't know. Like the Mighty Mouse bit, I was thinking that, like, I'm sure at the time that would have been a big thing. But there are points where this movie does start to feel forced. And like the Mighty Mouse bit coming in out of nowhere to kind of save the day a little bit.
Yeah.
It actually, that one did not click with me. I was like,
I loved it.
Guys, okay. He's a funny little guy, this Andy Kaufman, but the studio erupting into applause for that. Just that felt the sort of like self-congratulatory note that you're talking about, Dave. Like,
I mean, the only other sketch that we actually see in full is the
opener,
Wolverines, which, man, I felt like, hey, movie, if what you're trying to do is show the genius of John Belushi, you have succeeded in showing us that there's no one like John Belushi. I felt like, man, we just watched that scene get recreated, and it's just not as good.
And that's right after the Andy Kaufman thing too. So it's like those were the like climactic points of the movie. It's like, look, guys, everything's okay. Saturday Night Live will live on. And I was like, oh, you whiffed that a little bit. Yeah. And I wonder if the proper thing to do would just be show the clip from the actual show.
I don't disagree with that. I think that could have been cool. I think it could have been neat.
You remember Good Night and Good Luck, the George Clooney movie, right?
Yeah.
So what they did in that movie is they had David Strathairn, right, play the journalist, and then they had actual Joseph McCarthy clips be Joseph McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that could have been. I don't know that they could have achieved that given.
Well, you do.
The
you
structure
could
of this movie,
like the fun thing where like the camera zooms in on like the camera in the movie. You know, into the eyepiece of the camera, and now we're like transitioning into the real clip. Or something to that effect, I think you could sell it.
Like just use actual footage when you're talking about the actual. But all the actors have like backstories they need to get into in this, so it wouldn't really make sense. But like that's an interesting approach to like referring to real life events that I thought was kind of cool. Anyway, at the end of the day, I enjoyed the movie. It's just a missed opportunity for me to interrogate the power behind one of the largest cultural institutions of our lives.
I don't think that's a invalid criticism of this movie. I mean, I think you could say Saturday Night more like Saturday Slight, because the movie's kind of slight. It's not a weighty piece. It's a fun, breezy.
All right,
time.
Jeff, you saved it with that. You saved it. With that. Anyway, at the end of the day, it is really impressive that Jason Reitman made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.